Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Gerd, we get to answer listener questions. It is my favorite kind of show because we get to serve our audience, directly address their questions and concerns, and also they've done the show prep for us. So really, it seems pretty win-win.
It is. These are the best because you just show up and you do it. And I don't know that we will get through all of them still. We did 3 last week. We probably have 2 more to go, but we'll see how this one goes. And really, if we're going to get through them, let's just go. Let's just start and let's just get this going. What do you say?
All right. First one from Joe K. Is Paris really a potential to start? And this would be Paris Johnson, the true freshman offensive tackle. I would say any chance of Paris Johnson starting this year probably ended with spring football not happening. He still was probably something of a long shot. Tackle is really not a spot you see a lot of guys, and anywhere on the offensive line, really not a spot where you see a lot of true freshmen starting anyway. Without spring practice, with what's probably going to be a shortened, summer camp, I think it's basically impossible to see him starting. I think the shorter time the prep time is before the start of the season, the more likely it is you're going to see kind of the guys who were the default choices probably be the guys who end up being the starters this year. Yeah,
and Nicholas Petit-Frere has such a head start on Paris Johnson. And yeah, Johnson looked good in his 3 practices, according to Greg Stadrawa, but that's 3 practices compared to, 60 for Petit-Frere, 70, 80. And so the opportunity to catch up is gone. You think back to Michael Jordan starting as a true freshman at left guard. He won the job in the spring and was probably the number 1 guy by about practice 4 or 5, but there was no practice 4 or 5 this year in the spring. And so now you're asking Paris Johnson to come in with 3 practices under his belt when fall camp goes, which might be an abbreviated fall camp at that. And it's if he does, then you might want to start some comparisons to Orlando Pace. But without, and Greg Stadrawa said yes, he's got a chance. I think a lot of that is coach speak. He's got a chance to compete. That's for sure, because it's, there's only 3 guys there and you got to rotate and you can't have one guy taking all the reps. But if he starts this year, it might be because of injury or, maybe at some point he just, you get more practices in as the season goes on and maybe he emerges. But game 1, I think it's close to an impossibility.
Yeah, they ended up starting 4 different guys at tackle last year at various points. And so, sure, it's possible he starts or plays at some point in the year or plays meaningful snaps at some point during the year. But you've got Thayer Munford, you've got Nick Petit-Frere, you've got DeJuan Jones. You've got guys there who are pretty clearly ahead of him on the depth chart right now. And, he might, even if he jumps one of them, he still, you would still need someone to get hurt or, another spot to open up somehow in order to get in the field. So, yeah, I think the safe answer is probably not. He's probably not going to start this year. Go ahead.
Real quick though, Thayer Munford's back. Is his back? We always got to keep that in mind. If that becomes an issue again, now he's one step closer to starting.
Yeah, it's possible. They had at one point where they had 3 different tackles hurt last year at the same time. So it can happen, but it would require something to happen to the guys ahead of him in order to have him probably start a game this year. Next one from Barrett777. Who will lead the team in sacks, interceptions, and tackles?
Tackles will be Pete Werner. Sacks, I will go ahead and say Zach Harrison, although maybe Baron Browning is a sneaky pick there. Interceptions, I can't go with Sean Wade because I would expect few throws to be made his way. So then will they throw at Cameron Brown? You think Like, it should be Josh Proctor as the deep safety, but maybe it's Pete Werner because he's amazing according to the coaches. I don't see it being Pete Werner. I will go sacks, Zach Harrison, tackles, Pete Werner, interceptions. Let's say, I think the best answer is Josh Proctor.
Josh Proctor's a good answer for the defensive backs, and I actually had the same thought process as you. And then I looked up. Do you know who led the Buckeyes in interceptions last year?
Was it Sean Jeff Okuda?
It was not Sean Jeff Okuda. It was just regular Jeff Okuda. Yes, it was Jeff Okuda. So, being the best corner, future top 5 pick, did not necessarily preclude teams from throwing at him. Some of the dumb teams still did. So, yeah, I think Sean Wade. I had the exact same thought process as you on the interceptions. Like, no one's gonna be dumb enough to throw at Sean Wade, but people threw at Jeff Okuda, so you never know. Yeah, I would also go with Zach Harrison in terms of sacks, tackles. I think Pete Werner's a pretty darn good answer.
If he's the will, he'll lead the team in tackles, I think.
Well, he was second on the team in tackles last year and is moving to the position of the guy who was first on the team in tackles. So, Jordan Fuller was third on the team in tackles, so I guess it could be Josh Proctor. But yeah, Pete Werner probably has to be your clubhouse leader for tackles this year. Next one from Buckeye Dale. All the talk last year about Harry Miller being beyond his years at center. Any thought of sliding Josh Myers over to left guard? I don't think so. I guess they've probably thought about it, but you have a center and a quarterback who have worked together. You have a returning center. There were no problems with Josh Myers last year. It was not like, if as soon as they can upgrade from Josh Myers, things will really get better. Like Josh Myers handled all the line calls, did everything he needed to do. Like, I think if Harry Miller had to play center, I don't think there would be a huge drop off, but I don't think there's any reason for them to put 2 guys in new starting spots on the line when they can just have 1 guy in a new starting spot on the line. In the interior line, they're going to have to obviously have a new right tackle as well. But I don't think they're going to feel the need to do that because Harry Miller will get his chance probably in 2021 if Josh Myers turns pro. But yeah, I don't think there's any reason to change something that's working as well as Josh Myers is right now.
Yeah, if your center has a decision to make after the season on whether or not to turn pro, then he's probably a guy you don't need to slide over. And like I said, anytime they want the 5 best guys to play, and then they'll move them where they need to be. But there's no reason at this point. You know what you have in Josh Myers. He has done very well. He's a potential All-American, and don't change that right now when you've got Jordan or Justin Fields and Josh Myers coinciding very well right now. The snaps are good. He knows what to expect. Don't change things. Don't throw a wrench into anything. Even though we expect Harry Miller to be the greatest center in college football history, I still don't think you slide him in at this point when you've got one of the best centers that Ohio State has seen in some time, and they've seen some Remingtons.
Yeah, this is a don't mess with a good thing, I think. He will have his chance, but his chance will, barring injury, will probably not come in 2020.
Yeah.
Next one from SoCal. Which defensive coaches will be in the booth and on the sideline? Have they officially made that decision yet? I don't feel like they have.
No, but my thought would be Barnes will be upstairs. Combs wants to be downstairs. Greg Madison has generally been downstairs. I would expect him to go upstairs because he doesn't have a position other than Sam linebackers and the bullet. And so I would expect it to be Larry Johnson, Al Washington, and Kerry Combs on the field with Barnes and Madison upstairs. Combs does not want to be upstairs, basically. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, putting Combs upstairs seems like a total waste. Like, Combs is an energy guy, so you want Combs on the bench, pumping up your team when you need to, and he can help with the defensive backs and all of that stuff. And if you've got Barnes upstairs, then you have Kerry Combs downstairs. I think that's a good balance because Kerry Combs being downstairs lets you have both the other defensive coordinator and the other defensive backs coach upstairs. And then you're not really missing anything because Kerry Combs can be all of that stuff down on the sidelines as well. So yeah, I think that alignment makes probably the most sense of anything they could do.
Although, Tom, if there are if the COVID-19 thing still has to be a concern, do the older coaches, because they are more susceptible, do the older coaches move upstairs to provide distancing from the players?
Of course, that would put them in close proximity to the media, always known for our health and hygiene. So yeah, I don't know. I can't see any possible flaw with that plan. Next one from Buckeyes. Starting defensive backfield. I'll go first. Shaun Wade at corner. You go next, Gerd.
I will say, I think what'll happen is it'll be Wade, Cameron Brown, and Seven Banks rotate at corner, and Josh Proctor will be the deep safety. And today, as I was looking at this, I've decided that I'm going to go with Marcus Hooker as the slot corner safety until I see or hear differently. And that could very well happen. I could hear, be told, you're an idiot, it's this. But the options just aren't many right now. And Combs has talked about wanting to bring back that 3 cornerback rotation. Of course, the question is then, is that slot corner part of that rotation? Is that one of the stops that the corners will make? And if so, then they're really never off the field getting a rest, which is what he likes about it. So I'm going to treat that slot corner as a separate position from those 3 corners for now. So I'll say it'll be a 3-man rotation at corner, because I don't know that there's much separation between Seven Banks and Cameron Brown, and that they all deserve to play. Kerry Combs has already said he sees Tyreek Johnson on the outside rather than the inside. So that doesn't. There's not a lot of guys who can do that slot corner, and I don't know that Marcus Hooker is, but I know he was out there last year playing in key moments, and so that's my answer for the entire 5, or rather I guess it is a 5, but the starting 4. Where are you other than Shaun Wade? Because yes, Tom, we've got that one.
I thought we were going position by position. Sorry.
I know, sorry.
Yeah, the only variation I could see on what you said is, maybe you slide one of the Banks or Brown to the slot corner spot and have Tyreek Johnson in that rotation. I mean, he's someone who we were really looking forward to seeing this spring and then really didn't get to see. But Kerry Combs has talked him up enthusiastically enough that it sure seemed like Tyreek Johnson is a potential contributor this year. So if you can get him into that rotation outside, maybe you can make, slide Cam Brown inside, because Cam Brown, I think, is not quite as tall as Seven Banks. Maybe he's Cam Brown as a slot corner, and then Seven Banks and Tyreek Johnson and Shaun Wade are rotating at corner. That's the only other thing that I could see as, another potential change to what you laid out. But I mean, yeah, we got to watch exactly one spring practice, and from that one spring practice, I came away impressed with Marcus Hooker. So sure, I could see him potentially being a guy who takes that next step and becomes a starter, or at least a regular contributor this year. But there's a lot of questions there. I don't think I walked away thinking he was immediately ready to step on the field and start when we watched that practice, but I wasn't really thinking, hey, he's only going to have 2 more of these and then be off for several months because the world's about to change. Ready. That was not at the forefront of my thinking when we walked out of the Woody that first day of spring football practice. So next one from CD Buck. Defensive tackle lost a lot. Run stoppers are needed. Who will step up? Togiai, Cage, Garrett, Vincent? Anybody moving there?
Well, we know Cormonte Hamilton has moved to the 3 tech to be along with Tehran Vincent and Haskell Garrett, and Antoine Jackson is also there, although he can play both. And then you've got Tommy Togiai and Jerron Cage at nose. I think we both expect some very good things for Tommy Togiai. Tehran Vincent, Larry Johnson was saying he was doing well, showing what you expected to see from him this spring. So the fact that he is healthy again is huge. But let's keep in mind, Tommy Togiai played and rotated with Devon Hamilton and Robert Landers the last 2 years. So now this is his job, and he's got experience. He was good enough to play early. And this could be, it's his first year starting, but it could be his last year at Ohio State because there are those kinds of expectations for him. I'm not saying he's going to go after this year, but he's a hard worker. You never hear anything bad about him. You only hear good stuff about him. He's a happy-go-lucky guy. He's always smiling. And now the job is his. And he's one of those guys I'm sure is just, it's killing him not to be on campus getting ready for this job. So if, who's stepping up, I expect him to step way up. And then 3-tech, I think there's enough guys there to be just fine. Can they be Jayshon Cornell? I think so. Maybe even better. Better than Tom. Do you expect 3-techs to be better than last year? I think if they're as good as they were last year, they'll be fine. But I think the potential is there that they could be better because Haskell Garrett's going to be a year better, and Tehran Vincent might be really, really good.
I think Tehran Vincent is the guy that I would have circled in big, dark Sharpie before spring ball, let alone now. I mean, Tehran Vincent, people I think have forgotten about him because he missed all of last year with a shoulder injury. But as a true freshman, he had a sack in the Big Ten championship game. Like that is an important data point. Just that he was out there. They trusted him in a big spot. He performed in a big spot as a true freshman. And he came in, he was a 5-star player in the 247 composite when he came in. Number 20 player overall in the nation, number 1 defensive tackle in his class. And here's the other thing that is probably should not get lost in all of the uncertainty about what's going on right now and who has access to what. Tehran Vincent's dad was Troy Vincent, who played in the NFL for a million years. Tehran Vincent probably has a better home gym than you do, would be my guess. And probably has access to better training equipment than you do, based solely on the fact that his dad played in the NFL for a long time. I would guess they've got a decent setup at home. So he's probably going to be pretty well positioned relative to an awful lot of people to come back in good shape, ready to play, ready to perform. He has someone who was literally a professional athlete in his home to help train him. Like that all seems like that should be something that plays into his favor pretty strongly. He's someone who coming into the spring, I would have said, I'm expecting big things from him this year if he can stay healthy. Again, we got to watch one practice. He participated in, I think, if I remember right, some drills, but not 100% of them. But he was out there enough that it was like, all right, he'll probably be fine for fall. I would expect him to come out of, the train at home with whatever you have there in pretty good shape, probably better off than a lot of people on the team might be. And yeah, I'm expecting pretty big things from him this year.
I think it's a good thing that we both picked a guy, one of the two, one nose tackle, one 3-tech that should step up and do serious things. I am interested to see what Cormonte Hamilton does. That's a difficult transition. Jerron Cage is another guy who we haven't seen much from, but when you're behind 3 other talented guys, that makes it tough. So, not having spring was unfortunate for the players. It was also unfortunate for us because we didn't get to see anything.
Yeah, that's of all the inconveniences of this whole thing, that's definitely right at the top of the list. I see that you have moved something and highlighted it in our shared Google Doc, so I'm going to guess that means this is the question you want to do next.
Well, this one was the one that was right under the starting defensive backfield. I think you jumped it.
I did jump it then.
Thank you.
From SoCal, if Joe Burrow had beaten out Dwayne Haskins, would Ohio State have won the 2019 national title?
I don't believe so, because here's my thinking on this. If Joe Burrow starts in 2018, he leaves for the NFL after the 2018 season because he would have had a season much like Dwayne Haskins did, except there would have been more running, but the passing game would have been, say he throws for 3,800 yards and Ohio State's offense is great and Ohio State goes to the playoffs or does what they did, in 2018. They weren't going to the playoffs with that defense, but he would have done enough to go pro because that would have been his 4th year. So he would have been a fourth-year junior. Totally understandable for him to leave. So then that leaves Dwayne Haskins here in 2019, a better defense, but and a better offensive line when it comes to running the ball. Would the offense in 2019 have been able to run the ball well enough to win a national title? I think they would have run it better than they did in 2018. But Tom, I still have concerns about Haskins' inability to run, hurting the running game in total of the Ohio State offense. So I kind of have doubts that it would have been good enough, but he was so good throwing the ball. I think they could have, but I don't know that. I don't know that I think Justin Fields did as much as either of those guys would have done last year.
Yeah, I don't know that quarterback, even if those guys had been incredible, I don't know that quarterback is so much of a step up that it makes a huge, meaningful difference on what they got. I mean, this is not like they were going from, if you had replaced JT Barrett on the 2020 Buckeyes or 2019 Buckeyes to Dwayne Haskins, like, yeah, sure, that would have maybe made enough of a difference, but they got such a good performance out of Justin Fields last year that I don't know how much better those guys actually would have been than what they got out of Fields. And Fields gave it to you with his legs, gave it to you with his arm. I mean, he completed 67% of his passes, 3,273 yards, 41 touchdowns, threw 1 interception during the regular season, 3 total on the year, and also ran for 484 yards, 10 touchdowns on the ground. I mean, I don't know how much better Joe Burrow is than that, or Dwayne Haskins is than that. I mean, maybe the passing numbers are a little higher, but I don't think you can look at Dwayne Haskins' numbers from 2018 and just go, well, that's what he would have done in 2019, because they couldn't run the ball in 2018 for like long stretches of the season due to the offensive line. If they're getting a 2,000-yard season from J.K. Dobbins, they don't need like a 5,000-yard passing season from Dwayne Haskins. Like a 3,500-yard passing season from or 3,200-yard passing season from Justin Fields was plenty of passing. That was not the problem last year. So, yeah, I don't think that the step up from one to the other would have been like such a guaranteed bump up that, it would have made a huge difference. The only thing that really could have changed things is not adding Joe Burrow to Ohio State, but taking Joe Burrow off of LSU. Because you take Joe Burrow off of LSU, they are, I don't know who they get as a quarterback, but it's not Joe Burrow. So, maybe that's enough that, as close as Ohio State was to beating Clemson, if there's a slight incremental increase in the quarterback performance because it's Dwayne Haskins or a 50-year Joe Burrow over Justin Fields, like, sure, maybe there's a slight increase there, and that's good enough to beat Clemson, and then you're not playing LSU in the championship game, and you're playing whoever else, whether it's
Bama.
Well, probably not Bama. I mean, I don't know. Who was Georgia? Who was fifth last year?
LSU's
Georgia?
not going to be in the SEC championship game without Joe Burrow, so.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it could have been Alabama. And yeah, I would say they're beating Alabama last year with Mac Jones as the quarterback. So yeah, I mean, from that perspective, it could have been just, I don't think it's that big of an increase for Ohio State, but just taking him off of LSU might have been enough to swing the whole thing.
Good point.
All right, next one from Barrett 777. OSU averaged over 260 plus yards on offense and defense in 2019, which is ultra rare. Do you expect the same 50-50 balance in 2020? I think he means 260 yards on the ground and in the air, right?
I'm guessing.
Yeah. Okay. So
yes.
Over 260 plus yards in the air and on the ground. Do you expect the same 50-50 balance in 2020? I'm going to say no, I don't. What about you?
How do you see it?
I think that there's probably going to be more passing because you've got, you don't have J.K. Dobbins, which, there's some question as to what you're going to have in terms of running backs. And I think you've got, Master Teague is coming back off of a leg injury. Marcus Crowley is coming back off a leg injury. Trey Sermon is coming in new to the system. He also had a leg injury last fall. You've got Steel Chambers. You've got Mayan Williams. But I don't think there's anyone there that I'm looking at and thinking, this guy's going to run for 2,000 yards like J.K. Dobbins did last year. I don't know that I see anyone there that I think this guy's going to run for 1,700 yards or 1,600 yards. Like it might be a little bit of a running back by committee. And I think they should be able to run the ball. The offensive line should be pretty good. You've got Wyatt Davis back. You've got Josh Myers back. You've got Harry Miller at left guard, who's going to be just fine. You've got Thayer Munford back at left tackle. You've got, so you've basically got one offensive line position that's any kind of a question mark. You've got good options there. Like, I feel like they should be pretty effective running the ball. You still have Justin Fields, but I don't know that I see them running the ball quite as much as they did last year, just because they don't have that, that one true running back that's going to be, that workhorse who can really, really just pound the ball, 20, 25 times a game. I think they're going to probably throw a little more. Just look at how talented that wide receiver room is. Like, I think they're going to probably throw a little more than they did last year would be my guess.
Yeah, they don't have anybody as good as J.K. Dobbins on the roster right now. But you talk about the talent in the receiver room, but it's still pretty young. Although I think with Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, you can do an awful lot of damage while also moving the chains here and there with Jalen Harris and G. Scott and Julian Fleming. And granted, I've already said Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to have, 40 or 50 catches as a freshman out of the slot as well. So there's Justin Fields will go downfield more than Dwayne Haskins, and there is definitely more possibility for some increased passing. That's how I was thinking. 260, I would say maybe like 280, 220, something like that with the passing game. Even though the offensive line is going to be very good, none of these guys are J.K. Dobbins, and will any of them kind of make the same mistake that J.K. Dobbins did when he was splitting time? Are they all trying to hit the home run to earn more carries, or can they just be happy? These are my 9 carries. I'm going to do what I can with them, and I'm not going to try to force anything. Is that a possibility for them? I'm sure they don't want to make the same mistakes that Dobbins did in 2018. But I think it's hard when you only get limited opportunities and you try to maybe do more than is there. Does that hurt the running game? And do the freshmen hurt the passing game? So, Tom, I'm thinking maybe 400 yards total offense tops.
And then the second half begins. I mean, I'm just looking back at 2017, just for a little bit of a comparison. 243 yards per game on the ground that year, 262 yards on the through the air that year. So I mean, you're not far off, and obviously you've got a better passing quarterback in 2020 than you did in 2017 with JT Barrett. But that's a reasonable benchmark that they could end up somewhere around there, where you're not running the ball quite as much. You're probably throwing it a little bit more, but if you're gonna not make 260 yards per game, I think running is where they will probably be a little bit shorter than that.
And Justin Fields is so good throwing the ball that I could see them throwing for 300 yards a game, honestly, because I mean, you are going to showcase him because he is one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. And he is, if he's your best player, now he becomes that workhorse. And if it's with his arm, that's fine.
Next one, related question from Barrett777. If OSU averages 260 yards per game rushing, break out the yardage per player who make up those 260 yards per game.
All right, let me get my pen here. So 260, I will say 35 from Fields. Takes it down to 225. So now basically you just split that at 225 between 3 guys, because I don't think there's enough for 4 guys. So it's, at this point, it would be Trey Sermon, Master Teague, and Marcus Crowley. So let's say, like 80 first. I kind of see Sermon and Teague being around the same in terms of yardage. I don't know that I see one maybe if we're talking about a full 100 between those two, maybe Sermon is 55% and Teague is 45. So let's say 80 for Sermon, 70 for Teague, maybe 50 for Crowley. That's 200. And then you get 25 yards for Drew Chrisman.
Per game. That would be quite a season if Drew Chrisman's averaging 25 yards per game on the ground. Yeah,
but I've got it like 80, 70, 50 for the top three running backs.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds reasonable. I think your top guy is probably going to hit 100 yards a game, probably. Whoever that is. I guess I would expect Sermon at this point, maybe. Sermon or Teague. I would have 100% said Teague had he not gotten hurt in the spring. Now, kind of, you don't know. But last year, Dobbins averaged 143 yards a game. Teague averaged 60. And then Fields and Crowley and Steel Chambers were all between 33.8 and 34.6. So, I don't think they get to that 260 number. So,
yeah.
Maybe your leading rusher is, let's say it's Sermon with 100, and then Teague at 80, and then Fields and Crowley, in that 35 to 40. That gets you to what, 250? I mean, that's probably about right, I guess. It's somewhere in there. I don't think they have anyone that gets close to 140 yards per game like Dobbins did last year, though.
Well, and you look over the years. So last year was 266 yards a game. The 2018 outlier was 171. That's not what they're going to be this year. 2017 was 243 yards. 2016 245. 2015 245 in a bad year, but you also had Ezekiel Elliott. Then 2014 264. So we can expect 250 yards because that's what they are. So maybe 260 isn't that outlandish. I just, now if you're talking 260 yards rushing a game, I guess a lot of that would come from the fourth quarter blowouts, where it's now you're just handing the ball off and you have 150 yards in the first three quarters rushing. And then the fourth quarter, it's just, it's Marcus Crowley and it's Steel Chambers, and together they put 90 yards on the board, and now you've got 260 yards or whatever. So maybe that's where a lot of it comes, because they're gonna be so good throwing the ball that you would think they'd be doing that for the first three quarters, and then you can make up some of that difference on the ground in the fourth quarter as you run out the clock and you just try to get out of town.
All right, next one from Barrett777. Justin Fields got dinged up some last year as a result, and given he is 1 year from potential NFL payday, does he become less of a factor in the run game and avoid contact as much as he can? I feel like we ask this question every year, and it never really happens. I mean, you saw it a little bit from Dwayne Haskins in the first 2/3 of 2018, where he really didn't want to be a part of that run game, but then when he needed to, he was. I think you're going to see him. They may go with the JT Barrett role with him, where you would see JT Barrett run the ball 5 times when they were playing Bowling Green or Tulsa or someone like that, and then they would save his carries for the games where they really needed him. So, when they're playing Michigan State, when they're playing Michigan, when they're playing Wisconsin, those are the games where you really kind of lean on him to make plays with his legs. They'll probably be somewhat strategic about it, but if the game is on the line, I don't think there's going to be any kind of a question that they will be completely fine with Justin Fields trying to do it himself with his legs, and I would guess Justin Fields would be completely fine with that as well.
I was expecting him to rush for fewer yards this year than last year, but he averaged 35 yards a game. It felt like more last year, and that's because it was more until he got hurt. So I could see, Tom, what about a 2006 Troy Smith change, where he was a runner in 2005, but then he became drop back Troy in 2006 and had way fewer yards rushing. I think maybe there will be some of that, but also he's Justin Fields. We saw his first carry went for 52 yards, so that's always going to be a possibility for him to get some yards that way, and he's too good not to. But I don't think he had 21 carries against Penn State last year. I don't expect him to have any 20 carry games this year.
No, I don't think so. I would not expect that because, I mean, you have enough depth at running back that you're probably going to be able to spread those carries around enough that you probably don't need to lean on him that heavily. Yeah, I just looked it up just to check, and yeah, Troy Smith went from 611 rushing yards in 2005 to 205 in 2006. So I don't think you're going to see that big of a drop in his numbers, but yeah, like I said, I think you're going to see not very much of him running when they don't really need him in the blowout games, and then they'll just be strategic about when they roll that out when they really need it. And I don't know how many games they're really going to need it this year. I guess it depends on how many games they actually play. Next one from Barrett77. If OSU has a 4th and goal from the 1 and down 4 points, who gets the ball with a national championship on the line?
I said Drew Chrisman. I think the good news is that there's a question. Before it was JT Barrett and you knew what was coming. But I don't think you can answer that till you know who the top running back is. And then you still can't answer it because Justin Fields is a threat. And that's what makes this 4th down likely to be picked up because there's, that's the whole option aspect of it. That's, it could, they're not calling it for the running back. They're calling the play and it's up to the quarterback to make that decision. So, who gets the ball? Justin Fields. Does he keep it? That's up to the defensive end.
Yeah, that's actually probably the right answer. Does he give it to Master Teague going up the middle, which is probably the first option there? Does he keep it? And if he keeps it, does he run it in himself, or does he, dump it off to Chris Olave or someone in the end zone? Like there is not going to be one specific play. If it's a running back, sure, it's probably Teague, just because he, I think, is their, the most traditional goal line kind of back build that they have this year. But yeah, the actual answer is Justin Fields, and then what happens? Last one from Indiana Buckeye. Division I football coaches, what would be the preferred minimum number of practice days before starting a fall season? 2 weeks, 1 month? 1 month? They have said 6 weeks, but that includes, I think, some strength and conditioning time. So
yeah,
I think that's probably like a couple weeks of work with Coach Mick, get built back up, and then probably a normal fall camp kind of schedule where you've got about 15 practices or so in the span of a month to really get ready. Is that what your impression has been as well?
Yeah, that's what Ryan Day has said, where that would be the baseline, and it could be more, could be less, but 6 weeks I think everybody can live with. And so if we go through the phases of phase 1 where certain things are allowed, and then if 2 weeks go by and phase 1 is good, and then you can move to phase 2, and then 14 days of that go by. Once phase 3 hits, then you can start practicing, and then you can begin getting ready for the season. Now, I don't know, like phase 2, can they maybe work out in half shifts where it's half the team or it's quarter of the team? You get these, can they come back and work out? I don't know if phase 2 would allow that, but basically if they can get to phase 3 by the middle of June, there is still enough time for everything for these 6 weeks of practice to ramp up and everything to kick off in time. But as we mentioned on a previous show this week, some states are going to be different, and the Big Ten college football is up in the air on about who's going to play and who isn't. But yeah, the minimum, like I said this before, Kirk Ferentz wanted 8 weeks, 4 weeks of strength and conditioning, 4 weeks of practice. I think that would be a luxury that most coaches would love, but I don't, it doesn't look like it's going to happen. They've started at 6 weeks, and they'll go from there one way or the other. And not, like I said, well, Tom, will that be, we'll see. Will it be your mandated 2 weeks of strength and conditioning and then 4 weeks of practice, or, how they'll break it up? Will they allow 2 a days again? Will they allow some 3 a days to put some hair on these boys' chests? We'll see. Probably not, but, yeah, 6 weeks is the starting point right now.
And my assumption would be that there will be some kind of an agreement on number of practices you can have, and like there will be some sort of overarching decision on you can have this many practices on this many days, and they'll try and make it as consistent as possible between conferences, so you don't have the SEC doing 45 practices in 30 days and the Big Ten doing 15 practices in 30 days or whatever. That you end up with something fairly equitable for all of the teams. There had been some talk earlier that are they going to try and balance out? Well, some of these teams had 8 spring practices and others had 3. Like, I don't think there's any chance they're really going to balance that out at this point. But I think moving forward, they're going to try and make it probably as even as possible between conferences, if at all possible. And probably something in the neighborhood of 2 weeks of strength and conditioning, and then 15 or so practices over the span of a month, or 20 practices over the span of a month, and then kick the ball off for real.
Just imagine how bad the refs are going to be without spring practice this year. Oh.
Did you just call a balk on an onside kick? What are you doing?
All right, Tom, we did it.
We did it. We beat the listeners. You sent us all your questions, and we answered them all, and now you are out, and we have won.
In your face. We do thank you all for all of those questions. It took us four whole episodes to do this, and we'll do it again. I don't know, soon, because you guys are probably as spent from the questions as we are, and there's nothing else to ask. But we do always thank you guys for the contributions, because as Tom said at the outset, that makes this show really easy to do. So, Tom, you got anything to say before we get out of here?
Nope. Just thank you all for listening. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your continued support through this unusual time. We greatly appreciate it. And please, if you enjoy the shows, please rate and review them. That helps us in terms of having new people find the show. And if you have other Buckeye friends, let them know about the show. Let them know, hey, it's not going to make you smarter, but it will kill about half an hour at a time. And that's pretty important at this point.
That is. And again, if you want to check the show out ad free, you can do that at patreon.com/Buckeye Weekly. We are about due for our monthly Patreon only bonus show. So that'll be coming eventually. But first we will have to record it. And so that's the place where, like I said, you get all the shows ad free. And during the off season right now, there's a bonus show a month. And during the season, there's usually more than that. So you can check us out there as well. We want to thank you all for listening as always, and have a good day.
Steal a car and leave tonight. Des Moines